No, Mr. Sly Spy, I expect you to die. Sly Spy is a 1989 arcade game by Data East, known in its original Japan as Secret Agent, and Sly Spy Secret Agent in the USA and Europe. It's published by Data East. Plot of the game is terrorists have attacked the White House and plan on launching nuclear missiles. You get the idea, usual stuff. Run along, shoot things, and basically defeat all the baddies. Ocean purchased the license for the UK and Europe, and we have versions for the CPC Spectrum, C64, ST and Amiga. And yes, it will remind you of many other games from the era, Shinobi, Rolling Thunder and so many more. So we start off on the ST, and brilliantly cracked by the Pompey Pirates, who saved my backside so many times with these things. Please enter your security code. Of course, you're going to enter 007. It's so thinly veiled, this game. It's unbelievable. Level 1, you're parachuting towards Washington DC, having jumped out of a plane. Usual Bond fare. How many times do you see Bond jump out of a plane? Or the start of The Living Daylights, for example. Although he, technically speaking, no, he doesn't. He jumps out of a Jeep. Anyway, you're parachuting through the air. Well, you're not parachuting through the air. You're free-falling while shooting baddies. Amiga version, winners don't use drugs. Don't you forget that. So ostensibly it looks the same, except we have sampled audio. And when you've shot all the baddies on the first level, you reach a certain time point. In fact, your parachute releases, and look, it's got the American flag on it, just like the beginning of Spy Who Loved Me, except that's the British flag. C64 version. Sly Spy is a curious game because it was released on these 5 formats and pushed by Ocean, but at a time when they had so many other games out. And what you see when you look at the magazines is you see it come out, but it quickly gets pushed into the background by games like Total Recall, which were coming out at about the same time. C64 version has all the cutscenes from the 16-bit versions, but of course if you're on tape it has a multi-load, and it's very nice. Far nicer music than the 16 bits. Sprites are slightly smaller, which make this level work much better. I am using a very, very cheaty cheat mode on the C64, by the way, and on the ST as well. And there's the background scenery of Washington looms into view. Well, it looks like you slow down and then the parachute releases, but you don't get the full flag on the C64. Over to the Amstrad CPC. This game was coded by Software Creations in Manchester, who later did games like Plock and had both of the Follin brothers working for it. The game on this, the music on this game was by Jeff Follin. And we have music on the title screen on the Amstrad, remember that? For reasons. And we get a static cut screen on the Amstrad, and we fall out of the sky. And it's moving at a fantastic rate. Look at this scrolling as it goes down. There is, however, no sound. Having done a little bit of research and spoken to the original programmer of the game, it's entirely possible Ocean just decided to take the game and push it straight out without the sound being finished off. And incidentally, this scrolling on the Amstrad as you go down, you'd think it's vertical scrolling, but no, apparently the CRTC mode used shows that this is horizontal scrolling, which makes my brain hurt as to how you could have horizontal scrolling working vertically. But there you go. Apparently it's horizontal scrolling. Over to the Specky. Same code as the CPC. You do have sound though. No music. Of course, all these 8-bit versions are multi-load. Of course, the Spectrum and the Amstrad would have had the same sound driver, so it must have been... It could have been a memory issue on the Amstrad, I suppose, as well. Back to the ST for level 2, and you're fighting it out with a man who looks like David Pleasance of Commodore, who hurls barrels at you in front of Abraham Lincoln's statue. Then you capture a man who looks a bit like Saddam Hussein. C64. I'm liking this 64 version. It's got a little bit more pep to it than the 16-bit versions. It's the music, it's the slightly smaller sprites and the faster movement. Amstrad version. Looks so nice. But no sound. Curiously, this game was never sent to Amstrad Action for review. Probably because it had no sound. Spectrum version, it's a little bit difficult to see the sprites on this level. The colours are nice, but it doesn't really work as well. Level 3 is a motorbike chase. Not a car chase, a motorbike chase. You can jump in the air. Quite how, I don't know, because motorbikes don't generally... You can do pull wheelies, but to actually pull a wheezy and jump in the air, I don't know how that works. And you can kind of turn to one side to avoid the baddies. This is the Amiga version. End of level where you're chasing something that basically looks like a Ford Orion, and there's a man with a rocket launcher in the back. I assume that's an optional extra from Ford. Scrolling on the Amiga version isn't that good. Look at it. It's not exactly silky smooth, is it? 1990, so we're in the era of, oh, let's port it across from the ST and we don't really care. But silky smooth on the 64 though. You don't get to see the whole of the majesty of the Ford Orion, but it plays pretty good. Amstrad version, oh, it's again, this is really polished, and yet the lack of audio is rather noticeable. Sly Spy is a curious game on the Amstrad because if you look at the magazine advertising for people who sold software at the time, you'll see Sly Spy is listed as a forthcoming title for about 6 months, and then suddenly it's out and then it vanishes. I've got a feeling that Ocean weren't confident in this game as they would be for some of their other titles. And I have to say again here, the coder on the CPC's done really well, because games that look this good usually on the Amstrad, in the hands of less talented coders, slow down something chronic. This game moves really well. It moves along really fast. And again, I'm looking at the magazines at the time, we're over the Spectrum version now, it looks like Ocean were really pushing this pre-release, and then it got out and they just shoved it into a multi-game advert rather than full page. And as I mentioned before, no review version for Amstrad Action. Spectrum version. On this level you can climb up the ladders or you can go along the ground to get to the end of the level. How many Bond movies have boats in them? Oh, For Your Eyes Only has a boat. And there's boats, or smaller boats, in The Spy Who Loved Me. There's boats in... Oh, there's boats in so many. Boats at the start of Living Daylights. Mr. Ken Shabby was here. He would be able to give me every single reference to what's in this game. What is it about games of this era that have dogs running around that you need to shoot? Back to the Amiga. Now you have a golden gun. You can see what they did there. And if you collect so many amulets, you get access to that, and it lets out a special type of bullet that destroys all in its path. Back to the 64. You can see my golden gun completion in the bottom right hand side there. I need another amulet thing before I've got that. I just cannot think what that is a reference to. There's people on jetpacks. It's that guy who's always on the internet flying around on his jetpack thing. And look, then we do a Krypton Factor thing where we slide down on the kind of overhead wire thing. That's just conveniently there, you know, that's always conveniently just placed there. ST version. The thing about these 16-bit versions, and oh look, who is this? Who would be wandering around with big teeth wanting to beat you up? I can't think. He looks like Timothy Dalton there. And now suddenly it's we're underwater and swimming along, and it's a bit like Thunder. Was it Thunder Jaws? Each of these levels is fairly short. It's not like, say, Navy SEALs, which is out at around... no, Navy SEALs is a bit later, actually, isn't it? But where the levels are much, much bigger, but very samey. Yellow suits under the sea. Highly visible. I mean, if you're swimming around under the water, you want to be in camouflage, like our hero here, Sly Spy. You'd wear kind of blue and dark things, wouldn't you? And there's a shark here as well that you have to kill for the end of the level. Again, reference to, well, the spy who loved me with the sharks. And back on the CPC. And look, there's tigers you have to shoot with your gun, and you have to rescue the lady. Which Bond film has tiger? Octopussy. It's Octopussy, isn't it? Although at one stage the tiger is actually stuffed, as I recall. And this level is a little bit problematic on all the versions because this background makes it hard to see what's going on. Especially when you get to the Spectrum. On the Amstrad, it's not too bad. But you have to work out where to go, and basically you have to drop down, then go along. Oh, for some music. Oh, for some music. This isn't a bad game at all on the CPC. Or the Spectrum, may come to that, which has the same graphical issues on this level. But it needs a banging tune to drive it along like the C64 has, even on the Spectrum where there's only sound effects. And on the Spectrum there isn't really, well, time is an excuse I suppose, but that ST music could be happily running in the 128k you've got here. With the CPC you've got less memory, it's 64k, unless you're programming a thing like Dragon Ninja or Chase HQ where you do 1 to 8k stuff as well. Over to the ST. And as you get away from those rocks, this level works much better. Slightly pinky orange colour scheme. And the end of level is, oh, I mean, who could this be? I'm going to call him Mr. Hat. Mr. Angry Hat. That's who I'm going to call him. Enter CWD's Fortress, okay. Under the sea. So we're entering the fortress under the sea, it's the Spy Who Loved Me all over again, isn't it? This is the final level on the Amstrad where it's very cut down on this level. You merely have to shoot the end barrier and then you defeat the man who isn't Blofeld. On the ST, it's a copy of the arcade. i.e. it's the scene from Moonraker where you're climbing up the rockets and now you have a spiked ceiling coming down on you and then you shoot the man who basically is Blofeld. I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel. Sly Spy, Secret Agent. This could have been a classic game, but it got buried in the plethora of ocean games and other games out at this time. What's there to laugh? Well, all the Bond references. I mean, it's how do they get away with this? I've got no idea, but it's certainly better than the official games from Domark that I've played to date. The ST and Amiga versions have the feel of the games from this era. Neither are quite polished enough. The Amiga version suffers from taking no advantages of the system other than the sampled sound. It's a competent port on the 16-bits. That's really all you can say. On the 8-bits, That C64 version is a quite superb port of an average arcade game. It's really polished, it plays well, and I enjoyed it, but again, it gets put to one side by those other Ocean games out at the time. The Spectrum and Amstrad versions, well, the Amstrad version is really technically impressive. It looks really good, and the scrolling is fantastic. It's using the features of the CRTC chip to give you not smooth scrolling, but better scrolling. The graphics are really attractive. This would actually be a standout port if only it was for the total and utter lack of sound. It's CPC Paperboy all over again. The Spectrum version suffers the same way in that it only has sound effects, and of course all three 8-bit versions are marred by absolutely horrific multi-loads. There's no getting away from that, and some of these levels are quite short. Overall, for the era, the 16-bit versions are average games. The C64 version is actually quite a good game, but the Spectrum and Amstrad versions are let down by the lack of a thumping soundtrack. But the problem is that Ocean were putting out so many excellent games at this time that this game got slightly buried. But this game is worth revisiting for the simple fact it's better than any official Bond game I've played on the 16 or 8 bits.